Sagittarius, the sacred clearing. Letting go of what was never yours. When the weight isn't yours but you're still carrying it. Sagittarius, have you ever felt exhausted without knowing exactly why? It's not the long hours you've worked, the responsibilities you've taken on, or the visible challenges in your path. It's something deeper. A heaviness that clings quietly, like a shadow at your back. You sense it most when the world goes still, when the noise fades and you are left alone with your breath. That is when the weight makes itself known, not as sharp pain, but as a quiet ache in your spirit, a tightness in your chest, a subtle but constant pull on your energy. You've been carrying things that were never yours to hold. Words that others threw carelessly into your open heart. Doubts that slipped into your mind because someone else couldn't see your worth. Fears that don't belong to you but have found a home in your soul. And yet, you carry them anyway because you care, because you feel deeply, because you didn't know how to put them down without feeling like you were abandoning someone. But the truth, Sagittarius, is that the universe has been watching. And one quiet night, maybe it has already happened, maybe it is still to come, you will feel it. A shift in the air, a strange and gentle presence that doesn't frighten you but instead invites you to see the truth. You are living in a soul house filled with memories, emotions, and stories. But not all of them belong to you. And now it is time to clear them out. Not to erase your past, but to create space for your spirit to breathe again. So, if you've been feeling this weight, stay with me. This is not about loss, this is about freedom. And if this message speaks to you, remember to like, share, and subscribe, so we can walk this path of healing together here at Zodiac Wisdom. Gate 1. Recognizing the unnamed exhaustion. Sagittarius, you've always been the kind of soul who moves forward, even when the wind is against you. People see your resilience, your optimism, the way you can still smile after a storm, and they assume that strength is effortless for you. What they don't see is the toll it takes, the invisible exhaustion that builds over years of holding space for others. You've spent so much of your life being the light for those who were lost, offering warmth to people shivering in their own darkness. And while your fire has saved others, it has also quietly burned through pieces of you. This isn't the kind of exhaustion that sleep fixes. You can take days off, cancel plans, try to rest, and still wake up with that same heaviness in your chest. That's because this weight is not just physical. It's emotional and energetic. It's the accumulation of things you've taken on that were never truly yours. The silent burdens you picked up because you couldn't bear to watch someone else stumble. Think of the friend who always leaned on you but never asked how you were doing. The family member whose disappointments became your private mission to fix. The partner whose self-doubt seeped into your own mind until you started questioning yourself. Over time, you didn't just help carry their struggles. You started believing they were somehow yours to solve. You told yourself that absorbing their pain was an act of love. And in a way it was, but it was also the reason you began to lose touch with your own light. The tricky thing about this unnamed exhaustion is that it doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't scream stop or enough. Instead, it shows up as subtle resistance, the way you hesitate before saying yes to something you actually want, the way you feel tired before the day even starts, the way joy feels muted even when good things happen. It's the sense that your spirit has been carrying too much static, making it harder for you to hear your own voice. And because this heaviness doesn't come with a clear label, you've probably blamed yourself for not being strong enough or positive enough to shake it off. But Sagittarius, this isn't about being weak. This is about recognizing that some of the fatigue in your life is borrowed. It belongs to other people, other stories, other timelines. You've simply been the one holding it because your compassion runs deeper than your boundaries. I think of it like a traveler who stops at a mountain spring to refill their pack with fresh water. Except in your case, every traveler who passed by left something in your pack. A stone here, a handful of dirt there. Until one day you're climbing the mountain with a load you never chose to carry. And because it didn't happen all at once, you didn't notice how heavy it had become. This is what the visitor, that quiet, sacred presence, comes to show you. They come not with judgment but with clarity. To hold up a mirror and say, look, these aren't your stones. You can put them down. The question is, will you? Let's be honest, putting them down is not easy. Sometimes we become attached to burdens because they make us feel needed. Sometimes we fear that if we let go, we're letting people down. And for someone like you, Sagittarius, whose heart thrives on connection and meaning, the idea of releasing someone else's pain can feel almost cruel. But the truth is, keeping it isn't saving them. It's only depleting you. And when you are depleted, you cannot shine the way you were meant to. Recognizing this unnamed exhaustion is the first step towards sacred clearing. It requires honesty with yourself, a willingness to trace the fatigue back to its source, and the courage to admit that some of what you're carrying was never yours to begin with. It's not selfish to set it down. It's self-preservation. And more than that, it's the path back to your own fire, the one that was never meant to burn out in silence. Gate 2. Clearing the soul's house. Sagittarius, imagine your soul as a home you've been living in for as long as you can remember. Over the years, this home has welcomed many guests, lovers, friends, mentors, even strangers who passed through your life for only a short while. Some brought gifts, laughter, inspiration, moments of deep connection. Others brought storms, criticism wrapped in concern, expectations disguised as love, judgments disguised as truth. And because you are who you are, generous, open, and deeply trusting, you let them in without checking what they were leaving behind. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the rooms of your soul began to fill. The corners collected dust from memories you didn't want to revisit. The shelves became cluttered with other people's fears and insecurities. Even the windows grew cloudy from the fingerprints of those who once needed your light but left without wiping their hands clean. The thing about a house like this is that it can still look beautiful from the outside. You've learned how to keep the exterior polished, how to greet the world with a smile, how to make your energy feel warm, even when your inner rooms are overstuffed. But inside, you've been living with a kind of quiet chaos, walking around obstacles you never put there, tripping over emotional debris that isn't even yours. This clutter weighs you down not because it's visible, but because it blocks the flow of your energy. Every time you try to dream bigger, the echoes of old doubts speak louder. Every time you try to love more freely, you feel the ghost of a betrayal reminding you to be careful. Every time you want to rest, you feel restless because the air in your soul's home is too heavy to breathe easily. The sacred visitor who appeared to you, whether they were a guide, an ancestor, or simply your higher self, came to open the windows, to shine light into the corners you've avoided. They're not here to shame you for what you've held on to. In fact, they understand why you kept it all. Some of it was tied to people you loved. Some of it was linked to moments you didn't know how to process. Letting go of these items, these memories, these energies, it can feel like letting go of parts of your identity. But here's the truth they want you to remember. You are not your pain. You are not the keeper of other people's shadows. And you are not obligated to preserve the artifacts of stories that no longer align with who you are becoming. Clearing the soul's house is an act of deep courage. It means opening every door, even the ones you've kept locked for years. It means picking up each memory and asking yourself, does this still belong to me? Does this nourish my spirit? Or does it drain me? It means recognizing that love doesn't require you to keep every gift you were ever given, especially the ones that were wrapped in guilt, fear, or control. There's a powerful shift that happens when you start this clearing. You'll notice that some memories you've been holding onto out of loyalty actually keep you loyal to a version of yourself that no longer exists. You'll see that some beliefs you've carried like sacred truths are really just old survival mechanisms someone else taught you. And when you begin to set these things down, space begins to open, space for clarity, for peace, for joy that isn't shadowed by the past. It's important to remember, this process isn't about erasing everything or pretending it never happened. The soul's house isn't meant to be empty. It's meant to be intentional. You keep the things that make you feel alive, that remind you of your strength, that honor the lessons you've learned without chaining you to the moments they came from. And as you clear, you will feel the air shift. You will breathe deeper. The light will return to your windows, not because someone else cleaned them for you, but because you finally decided you deserve to live in a space that reflects the truth of who you are now. This is the sacred clearing. Not a purge of the past, but a reclamation of your present. It is the moment you choose to stop being a storage space for what no longer serves you, and instead become a sanctuary for what truly belongs. Gate 3. The soul returns like an old friend. Sagittarius, something extraordinary happens when you begin to clear what was never yours. There is a sudden stillness, a rare quiet that feels different from loneliness. It's the space you've been unknowingly craving. A space where the air is lighter, your mind is clearer, and your heart is no longer crowded with echoes of other people's fears. And in that space, something stirs. At first, it's subtle, like the faint hum of a song you used to know but haven't heard in years. Then it grows louder, warmer, closer, until you realize what it is. It's you. The you who existed before the weight, before the doubts, before you learned to dim your light so others could feel comfortable. This return doesn't happen in a grand, dramatic moment. It arrives in whispers. Maybe you catch yourself laughing in a way you haven't in a long time, not polite laughter, but the kind that shakes your whole body. Maybe you feel an old dream tug at you, one you buried because someone told you it was unrealistic. Maybe you hear your own voice speaking with clarity, not seeking approval, not shrinking to fit the room. It's like meeting an old friend at a train station after years apart. There's recognition, relief, and a little sadness for all the time lost. But more than anything, there's joy. The soul that returns to you isn't fragile. It's not the naive child who knew nothing of pain, nor the hardened survivor who built walls so high even you couldn't climb them. It's the integrated you. The one who remembers wonder but also understands boundaries. The one who can be open without being unprotected. This part of you doesn't need constant validation because it has learned the most important truth. You are already enough, exactly as you are. When this version of you steps back in, you will notice how quickly the old illusions lose their grip. The voices that once told you to be smaller now sound faint, almost laughable. The fear of not being understood no longer stops you from speaking your truth. The habit of overgiving begins to dissolve, replaced by a natural rhythm of reciprocity. Giving where your energy is valued, and resting when it's not. This is not selfishness. This is sacred balance. And with the soul's return comes a renewed sense of magic. Remember that child who used to believe in impossible things? That teenager who wrote down dreams as if they were certain to come true? That young adult who believed love should feel expansive, not restrictive? They are all still here waiting for you to reclaim them. You'll find yourself noticing beauty in small details again. The way sunlight filters through your curtains, the sound of rain on the roof, the familiar scent of a place that feels like home. These are not coincidences. They are invitations from your own spirit to be fully alive again. But here's the beautiful paradox. This reunion with yourself is not about becoming who you were before. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. The pain you've endured has shaped you, but it doesn't have to define you. The mistakes you've made have taught you, but they don't have to limit you. And the people who couldn't see your worth have no power over the way you see yourself now. In this moment, you understand that nothing was ever truly lost. It was simply waiting for the right conditions to re-emerge. And now, with the clutter gone, with the air in your soul's house fresh and clear, you are finally able to welcome this old friend home. This is the turning point, Sagittarius. Because once you've met yourself again, you can never go back to living as if you are incomplete. Gate 4, releasing with gratitude. Sagittarius, letting go is often misunderstood. People think it means erasing, forgetting, or hardening your heart so nothing can touch it again. But that's not what you're here to do. Your soul is not asking you to become unreachable. It's asking you to become free. And freedom doesn't come from pushing things away in anger. It comes from placing them down with love, acknowledging what they brought you, and walking forward without dragging their weight behind you. You see, everything that has entered your life, even the painful chapters, has shaped you in some way. The people who doubted you taught you to trust your own voice. The ones who left showed you the beauty of self-reliance. The betrayals taught you the irreplaceable value of loyalty. Even the moments that broke your heart reminded you of its resilience. When you look at your life through this lens, you begin to realize that you can thank the experiences without needing to keep them. You can honor their role in your story without giving them a permanent place in your home. Imagine holding a stone in your hand. First, it's light, even comforting. But the longer you carry it, the heavier it becomes. Soon it begins to wear you down, pulling on your arm, slowing your steps. There's no shame in having carried it. Maybe it once meant something important to you, but there comes a moment when you realize that its purpose is complete. Setting it down doesn't mean rejecting it. It means allowing yourself to walk freely again. When you release with gratitude, the energy shifts instantly. The bitterness fades, replaced by a quiet sense of peace. You may find yourself looking back on certain people or moments and no longer feeling that sharp sting in your chest. Instead, there's softness, a gentle recognition that they were a part of your growth, even if they couldn't stay. This is not because what they did was okay, but because you have chosen not to let it anchor you in a place you've outgrown. Gratitude transforms letting go into an act of empowerment rather than loss. Instead of feeling like something is being taken from you, you begin to feel like you are actively making space for something better. You're no longer clinging to what was because you trust what will be. And this trust is the quiet foundation of your new life. For you, Sagittarius, this release is not just about clearing the old. It's about preparing the soil for what's next. The relationships that align with your truth, the opportunities that match your vision, the experiences that lift your spirit instead of draining it, these need room to enter. And they cannot come if your soul's space is still cluttered with echoes of what no longer serves you. So you release. You let the memories stay in the past. You let the voices fade into silence. You let the attachments dissolve. And as you do, you notice something miraculous. You are lighter. Not just in body but in mind, heart, and spirit. You move differently. You breathe differently. You carry yourself with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be explained to anyone. And here's the most beautiful part. When you let go with gratitude, you close the door gently without slamming it, without locking it in anger. You simply walk forward, knowing that your energy now belongs fully to you. And in that moment you realize, the real gift was never what you were holding on to. The real gift is who you are now that your hands and your heart are finally free. Conclusion: the clearing is not the end but the beginning. Sagittarius, this journey of clearing is not a dismantling of who you are. It is the revealing of who you've always been beneath the weight. You are not walking away from your life. You are stepping into it fully for the first time without the burdens that once clouded your light. The pieces of you that were hidden beneath other people's fears, doubts, and expectations are now coming into the open, breathing freely, shining without hesitation. What you've released has not left you empty. On the contrary, it has created sacred space. Space for love that meets you in your wholeness. Space for friendships that don't require you to shrink. Space for dreams that are fueled by joy instead of survival. Space for a peace so real it doesn't need to be performed. It simply exists quietly, like the steady beat of your own heart. You now know that you don't have to carry what isn't yours. You've learned that your worth isn't measured by how much weight you can bear for others, but by how tenderly and intentionally you can hold your own soul. And in this awareness, you have become unshakable. From this moment on, your path will feel lighter. The steps ahead will not be driven by the need to prove, but by the desire to live. This is not the closing of a chapter. It is the opening of an entirely new book, one where you are both the author and the main character. You don't need to rush into it. The universe will meet you where you are, now that you've made space for it to arrive. So breathe in this freedom, Sagittarius. Let it settle in your bones. And if this message has spoken to the truth inside you, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe so that we can continue walking this path together here at Zodiac Wisdom, a place where your soul will always find light. The clearing is done. The space is yours. And your next chapter has already begun.